Holy, I forgot to hit record and I just did like a whole spiel. Okay. Okay. This podcast contains adult content. Welcome to the James Chambers Show's So This Happened in 2018 episode. I'm your host for this episode, James Chambers. And I'm all by my lonesome in the studio this week because Adrienne and I have been kind of on a hiatus until the launch of the new show coming in January 2019. And yes, things are moving along on that front. And to that point, I want to say a big thank you to our top patron at the moment, Liz Fisher. Your support is so important. We appreciate you. And if you want to become a patron of the James Chambers Show with JC and Adrienne, go to patreon.com/The Show. There will be a link in the description below. 2018 has been an amazing year for us, so I wanted to give you a little redux, sort of a compilation episode that hits many of the great highlights from the past year. There's no way to pull content from each and every episode, so I did a little picking and choosing. Because this episode is divided into segments, you can stop and start at just about any point that you want to and not worry about losing any narrative. Segments range from about 3 to 10 minutes or so, and you can basically take the show in bites if you want to, if you don't want to listen to the entire thing at once. But as always, thank you so much for your support this year. We could not do this without you. Now, a quick disclaimer. This episode uses pod-safe music from the following artists: The Blue Dot Sessions, Deep Space Destructors, Eddie, Micaiah Beats, The Silent Partner, Kevin MacLeod, and Tequila Moonrise. Okay, that's done. So now on with the So This Happened in 2018 episode of the James Chambers Show. Enjoy. If you watch the news or read the paper, or if you're alive right now, you know how unbelievably fast the news cycle has become. I was going to talk about Rudy Giuliani and his bizarre statements over the last weekend, but then like 50 other things happened. I can't even get ahead of this shit. It's crazy. Just when I thought I had my brain wrapped around Rudy throwing away a year's worth of Trump's denials and hush money payments and all that to Stormy Daniels, and then he fully reverses himself by saying he's...
The facts I'm still learning.
So, okay, let's get into that, I think. But then Trump goes and tries to cut $7 billion from the child health insurance program on the same day that Melania releases her totally copied version of the anti-bullying campaign she took from Michelle Obama. Trump then removes the protected status for over 300,000 immigrants who are productive, law-abiding persons. Not the DACA kids, mind you. This is a whole different group of immigrants he's boning. And then he screws over the public sector workers by, and this is actually during National Public Service Recognition Week, by cutting $143.5 billion from their retirement contributions. And then to top it all off, Trump pulls America out of the Iran nuclear deal, just for shits and giggles. And that was just 1 week. And I didn't even mention the dozen or so other like massive events that are going on. Living under this administration is like winning a game I didn't want to play in the first place, and winning means
you get to drink from the fire hose!
And now it's time for What's in My Browser? A while ago, I ran across an article that I found jarring, to say the least. Based on a recent poll, 35% of surveyed working Americans would give up their right to vote in all elections for the rest of their lives in an exchange for an immediate 10% pay increase. You heard that right. They would forfeit their most basic constitutional right for a modest 10% pay increase. And what's more, half of the millennials surveyed would be willing to give up their voting rights if their student loan debt was forgiven. That's appalling, but that's not all. The same survey also found 56% of working adults would work an extra 10 hours per week for life for a 10% pay increase. 40% would give up their dental care, and 19% would give up their health insurance for the next 5 years. And as noted, so 35% would give up their right to vote in all elections for life, and 9% would give up their children's or their future children's right to vote in elections for life. And 12% would break up with their partner or their significant other for a 10% pay increase. For concerned lay people like myself and the multitude of scholars that keep tabs on wage growth and the economy, this is the canary in the coal mine. And when we're talking about a full third of American workers who are willing to give up their right to vote forever for a relatively meaningless wage increase. And I've said this numerous times, and I cannot stress this enough. Your wages are too low. This is how desperate workers are becoming. Workers would leave their partners, give up their health care, give up their dental care, give up their children's or their future children's right to vote, my God, for a lousy 10% wage increase. This is where the moneyed elites, the corporate shareholders, and the grand old party, this is where they want us, all of us, in the lower 80%. They want us desperate and scratching for every nickel. They want us to be so afraid of losing our jobs that we don't ask for raises and we don't demand better benefits. We don't demand reasonable hours. We don't demand secure scheduling or mandatory sick leave or paid maternity or paternity leave. Hell, we don't unionize. They want us on the ragged edge between one medical emergency and poverty. And that's where we are, friends. And that's where we're all going to stay unless we fight back. Midterms are coming. Voting has already begun for primaries in several states. Get out and register to vote. Help your family register to vote. Organize a carpool and take your neighbors to register to vote. Don't ever lose your voice, and don't ever, ever give up your vote by just not showing up. It's time. It's our turn to make America better for us all.
All right, Marshall, tell me about the bomb before I put this shit in my gullet, man.
So the bomb is also a pretty hot pepper sauce. It is a ghost pepper sauce.
Son of a bitch.
But ghost pepper is in sort of it's a red pepper sauce. Very tasty. Got a little fruit up front, and then it hurts you.
We might have to get the milk ready.
Say again, Nick.
We might have to get the milk ready.
Yeah.
Let's do
All
it.
right, here we go.
Ready? All right.
Oh, Jesus, that's coming on pretty fast.
It comes on quick.
Yeah, this one...
Yeah, that one's getting a little hot.
It's got some heat. I'm having to breathe it out, dude.
Yeah, this is the first one that made my lips start to get heated. Just from eating it.
Still going a bit.
So I'd like to point out that this one's only 22,000 Scoville. And let me just refresh on the Scoville scale. I'm going to eat my second one here, and then I'll tell you.
No doubt.
Oh,
Going
yeah.
all my budget.
I'm doing it, baby. I'm doing the whole thing.
All right, I slam these other pieces. Well, I have 3 of these, you sons of bitches.
Oh, yeah, there it is. There's the tongue. Oh, fuck. So, I'll try to talk while this is burning. So the Scoville scale is a set of units based on the amount of capsaicin on a certain... based on a certain amount of capsaicin within a chili. Like a bell pepper.
What is capsaicin? You bastard.
Just spit it out, you son of a bitch.
Capsaicin is a compound that attaches to the pain receptors in your skin and your tongue.
Oh.
It doesn't actually hurt you. It just causes pain.
Oh.
God damn it.
It only hurts, not to be confused with pain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It doesn't damage you. Okay, so a bell pepper has 0. Everything up from that is increasing. Like a jalapeno has got about 5,000. And this has about 22,000 Scoville.
That's pretty hot, dude. That's pretty hot.
It ain't.
This one's making my...
I don't like it.
face
I don't like
wet.
it.
Hey, we cleared the board on that one though. We got we all got them down. Yeah, my tongue is on fire.
Yep.
I'm sorry, but this Dos Equis is not helping.
No, it's not.
Who
It
needs
kind of
milk?
makes it worse.
No milk for me. I'm holding out.
Ugh.
I got tissues here if your nose starts running.
This one hurts bad. This one hurts bad, boy.
And it wasn't even that tasty, honestly.
Compared to the other ones, oh no. The Chiba Gold was much better. Oh.
Okay, I feel like
My tongue.
I feel like I'm cresting. I feel like he's cresting.
If you want to argue that all journalists or their larger organizations are presenting bogus or intentionally misleading information, you must then assume that there is a grand conspiracy between all of the mainstream media outlets to obfuscate and mislead the public. It's just not plausible. Occam's razor applies. I mean, if a major news outlet is reporting on a situation and they get something completely wrong, it was more than likely unintentional. And to be clear, I'm drawing a distinction between news reporting and editorializing and opinion writing. Those are by definition biased by the authors, but facts are facts, and opinions about facts are just opinions, even if they're informed. As an example, let's assume the Associated Press reports that, quote, President Trump flies to India to negotiate trade agreements. Well, that's a simple statement of fact. Now, the left-wing alternate site reports that Trump flies to India to bull Narendra Modi on trade. Well, the fact is still the same, but the editorializing on the motive is obvious. Next, the hyperpartisan InfoWars runs the headline, Donald Trump runs to India to kick their brown ass in a trade war for America. Well, it wouldn't surprise me if they actually ran that headline someday, but again, the fact is still the same. President Trump flew to India to discuss trade. Everything else is editorializing. Being a savvy news consumer allows you to see the difference and acknowledge that you can get facts even in the most partisan of sources as long as you cross-reference and verify the fact. I don't endorse looking to InfoWars for facts, though. Just don't even bother with them. Seriously, that site is fucking useless, and Alex Jones is a deranged hack, just to put that out into the ether.
I'm setting fires everywhere.
So I touched on the financial aspect of accurate reporting a while back, and I think the implications of accurate reporting for financial gain is pretty obvious. The more reliable you are as an organization, the more eyeballs you're going to attract. The more eyeballs you attract, the more subscriptions or likes or shares you will get. All of those things are revenue generating. And yes, that is the same strategy that shill extremist outlets use as well, but that's just basic marketing. And this is where being a savvy and informed consumer becomes important. The value and integrity of journalism is being tested under Donald Trump and the era of alternative facts. He said the media and journalists are the enemy of the people. The enemy of the people. He said that repeatedly. There was this little part about the Constitution. It talks about a free book. No. A free fluff and tuck. No, damn it. A free press. Yeah, that's it. The framers of this country knew then how significant a free press is to the foundation of a free democracy. To listen to the President of the United States call the free press the enemy of the people only proves that he is unfit and utterly dangerous to the basic promises of our country. So, that would be editorializing. Let me jump back. The value of quality journalism is being tested under this president. Now is exactly the time that the major news organizations are going to promote fair, factual reporting so as to be above reproach. Not that Trump or his sycophants care about the facts. Damn it. Sorry. The better quality of journalism, the more financial support the major outlets are going to get. There. Got it. Another fundamental question that plagues journalists and is a tool used by their critics is bias. So let's look specifically at bias. And we all have biases, and we have them against all kinds of things. It's impossible not to have bias. It's part of our intellectual makeup. We use biases to make split-second decisions on how to behave and how to interact and how to exchange ideas. And even more fundamentally, we use bias to interpret a situation and apply our fight-or-flight instincts accordingly. We simply cannot divorce ourselves from it. To do so would be inhuman. However, we can train ourselves to understand our preconceptions, to recognize our biases, and work to overcome them. And we all do that on a daily basis. I think that fear of implicit bias goes to the heart of Monty's apprehension of the media. The problem is, I think the apprehension is misplaced. Monty is basically creating a straw man to assert that there is an extreme bias using the very narrow grouping of media outlets, like CNN, for example, and journalistic errors or retracted stories as proof that the overall mainstream media landscape is nothing more than a liberal morass. The problem is that taking a narrow and implicitly biased sample in order to make a larger sweeping claim about the media landscape is, again, a straw man fallacy. What are you? Okay.
And
Just
they
be clear
actually
that
missed the grander point.
the grander point to me is that America has never been a Christian nation. It was not a Christian nation. It is not a Christian nation. By demand of the Constitution, it's not.
Exactly.
By population, sure, we are a largely Christian nation.
Yes,
Christian in the
largely
loosest,
Christian. I was
loosest
going to
sense.
say largely Christian. I will agree with.
Yeah,
but
we're like an
Yeah,
80% majority. That's like all denominations, just like loosely, I believe in Jesus kinda and God sorta. That's
there
all of
is
that combined.
actually a movement towards secularism, which
Thank God.
I find refreshing.
Yes. I think
And-
that secular humanism is wonderful and can be a great source of benefit for our society. I think that having a more secular government in completely sexual government. Yeah, baby.
You want them up in our junk.
I mean, I guess only if it's
You
consensual.
want to be boofed by the government.
Again, if it's consensual and if it's beach week, then fucking Squeak can come on over and shove those himself.
It's mid-October, so surely it's still beach week opportunity.
Baby, it is beach week. Every opportunity, every week is beach week. We are way up.
And so
Lest I be accused of living inside a strict ideological bubble, I decided to let the activist mommy's content come through. And this is what I found. Bylines such as the brutal witch hunt against a Christian teacher who accidentally misgendered a student. Miracle. Baby survives abortion. Clinic offers to kill her again. Mom says no. Little girl reacts to leftist. Sex ed program says, Mommy, I don't want to be a boy. So you get the idea. Each of these articles could be unpacked enough to be a show in and of itself. The activist mommy relies on misinformation, thin arguments, baseless claims, and often horribly insensitive and derogatory language designed to mislead or just reinforce a false narrative. And I must point out, I have read many articles over the last few months and that have been shared on their Facebook page, and so far, none of them have offered substantiating evidence or facts. Canards, red herrings, and straw men abound at the activist mommy. And some of you might take issue with the idea that I qualify insensitive language as being a negative, and, that I'm being too PC or that I'm a snowflake. Well, let me remind you that decency still matters. When you intentionally disparage or deride another's very existence, and I'm referring specifically to the group's attitude towards LGBTQ people, you're nothing short of an arrogant, self-righteous, misinformed bully with no interest in and even an active resistance to learning about the issues. And bully may be a little tame now that I think about it. Maybe asshole would be more appropriate. You don't have to accept or even condone someone else's life or their understanding of themselves, but you damn sure should be kind and respectful. That's just being decent. You may think gay people are ungodly or transgendered people are unnatural, but you'd be wrong on both counts, and yes, there is science for both of those claims. Further, perpetuating stereotypical and ignorant views does nothing at all to build an understanding or cohesion in our society. You become the divider. You act as a barrier to understanding the very existence of your fellow humans and your fellow Americans. Between the years of 2000 and 2010, there were 248,000 children as young as 10 years old legally married to adults here in America. Now, many states set the legal marital age at 18 years old, But in every single state, there are exemptions that can be made to bypass the legal age requirement. And more than that, 25 states have no minimum legal age to marry at all. So did you catch that? You heard me right there that by law, a 40-year-old man could legally marry an 8-year-old girl, for example. He becomes her legal guardian. And we all know what happens after the wedding ceremony, right? Her husband can legally sexually molest her for years, and it sounds horrifying because it is. No child can consent to marriage, especially that young. No child can consent to a sex act that young. I mean, we have a legal framework of statutory rape and abuse in this country, and in every single state, that fact is hiding under the guise of holy matrimony. Rural states like Alabama, Kentucky, West Virginia, and Idaho top the list of child marriages. They are largely poorer communities and traditionally highly religious. Child marriages are often considered to be the solution to the problem of premarital pregnancy, especially when that pregnancy is the product of a statutory rape. If the parents are supportive, most prosecutors are willing to just waive the rape charge if the perpetrator marries the victim. Some religious conservatives claim that without child marriage, the rate of abortion would increase. So we just swap one hypothetical evil for an actual one. They tend to believe that the actual institution of marriage just itself will be enough to create a happy, healthy, and economically secure home for the new family. A family, made up of an 11-year-old girl and her 27-year-old husband. Let's just remember that the divorce rate for the average normal, non-rapey couple is over 50% across the socioeconomic spectrum. It's just magical thinking to believe that a child marriage will end up in anything other than abuse and pain. This problem is not relegated to, hyper-Orthodox religious groups. It's not exclusively the problem of the poor either. While child marriages tend to happen more in rural, poor communities, it does happen in urban, affluent settings as well. And yes, all of the big three religions here in America, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, have metaphorical blood on their hands on this issue. Study after study have demonstrated that 80% of child marriages end in divorce. They lead to increasing school dropout rates, a much higher rate of spousal abuse, both physical and mental, and not to mention the psychological damage done from repeated coerced sexual contact and just flat-out rape of a minor child. And here's some information that I pulled from The Economist. Quote, married children are twice as likely to live in poverty and 3 times more likely to be beaten by spouses. Around 50% more of them drop out of high school, and they are 4 times less likely to finish college. They have a considerably higher risk of diabetes, cancer, stroke, and other physical illness, and they are much more likely to suffer from mental health problems. Look, I probably shouldn't do this, but, oh well, screw it. It wouldn't be my show if there wasn't just a little bit of a rant here. I mean, where are the supposed pro-life groups now? Where is the just indignant rage and pomposity and the life is God's creation and it extends all the way to conception and life needs to be protected rhetoric? Where is that? People are using the institution of marriage to allow pedophiles unfettered access to children, mostly little girls. If you are truly pro-life, why don't you quit trying to climb inside women's vaginas and chain yourself to their cervix like a hippie blocking a foresting crew and go after the real damage being done to our children, like legal marital rape or sex trafficking or children's health care or getting healthy, sustainable foods for their kids and the mothers? How about dealing with the actual, real, existent life first? And later we can argue about your need to be in other people's hoo-has and to make other people bend to your religious convictions. Sure. Well, the line has been blurred so much that, as we've talked about before, Hillary, for example, her breed of Democrat is essentially Republican light. Mm-hmm. And that's where it would have been, 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. The main middle of the road Republicans would be essentially what moderate Democrats are now. And they've shifted. And so therefore, that they've pushed out those reasonable people off to the fringe, essentially saying you don't pass the litmus test for ideology. You don't express and demonstrate what's the term I'm looking for? Oh crap. What is it? It's on the tip of my tongue.
I don't know.
Oh my God.
If I knew where you were going, I would help you.
Oh shit.
Give me the lead up again.
Fucking balls.
Hairy balls?
Only if they help. It's like a purity test, but it's not. It's the
you're not talking about a shibboleth because that's a language thing.
Nah.
The litmus test?
This is going to drive me crazy. I know we're still going. We're still recording, and that's fine. I don't care. But it's the God damn it. I'm tempted to leave all of this in.
We are human, and so this is kind of amusing. Honestly, on my end, I'm like, I can't help it all because and
I'm like waving my arms around and smacking my head, like, what the fuck? It's so close. It's right there. It's like your value, virtue signaling. Woo-hoo!
That was hard, man.
God damn.
I never would have picked that out of the things you were going to.
Oh my God. That was rough. Okay.
Now that the phrase has made its presence known, you were saying.
I was saying, yes. The Clinton campaign, for all its faults, the fact that she lost really galvanized, I think, the people who we are seeing now who are winning. Because they are to the left. They are more progressive and idealistic. And that's what the party needs. It has to have that.
Well, right. They've been so busy beating the fucking worn out, tired idea that we have to be moderate. We have to be centrist. We have to appeal to these people. Well, you know what? Read your demographics.
Yeah.
Those are not the demographics anymore. They don't want, the center is not the center anymore. The center is now right.
Oh, the center has been right since the 90s.
Yeah.
I mean, that's Bill Clinton.
Yeah, he pushed it a notch or two to the left. And not himself, but reaction.
Yeah, but he was still center right. He would have been a Republican light. Mm-hmm. And the fact that the Democrats are still running with this concept, that the large big D Democrats are running with this concept that you have to be Republican light to get elected, and then maybe you can be progressive, is bullshit. It's a bullshit lie. And you see that because we just won a huge chunk of elections.
Yep.
And that's where the party needs to go. And I think that the blue wave, for what wave metaphor you want to use.
We're not measuring it in feet, okay?
We're gonna ride the curl. We're
and that stuff.
Yeah, fucking surfing shit, which I love.
White caps and things.
Yeah, and foam, and that's the blue foam to the water. And we won.
Out, man.
We won. Fuck you.
Yeah. Yeah. And go away, Hillary.
Yeah, and go away,
because
Hillary.
If you come back, we're not going to do that anymore. Go away.
We'll come back to the James Chambers Show in just a minute. Please keep your faith where it belongs, in your home, in your family, in your church, and in your hearts. It's perfectly okay to preach and try to convert. I get that. And that's all well and good. But keep your dogma out of our courthouses. You forcing your narrow evangelical version of Christianity onto the rest of us is plain wrong, and we will fight to keep it out of our country's laws. America is founded on the principle of separation of church and state. Keep your false teachings out of my wife's, my sister's, and my mother's and my friends' wombs. Oh, and FYI, I am in no way arguing that you should be silent. I would be monstrously hypocritical to use my freedom of speech to demand that you relinquish yours. So, by all means, keep posting on social media. Keep discussing all the ins and outs of why everyone but you are wrong and deviant and evil. No one wants to stifle your free speech, so don't claim to be a victim. You're not. Greg Graffin said it best when he said, "Lay hands off her body. It's not your fucking life."
Okay, here I go.
All right, everybody
Fire
got
in
your
the
dab.
hole.
Everybody got your dab.
I got my
It's
dab.
nice knowing you, boys.
This has been fun. All right, here we go. All right.
I hate you, Marshall.
No, I also hate Marshall.
I hate myself.
I'm gonna eat my second one. If I
Oh my god,
Yeah,
that's
I'm gonna do it.
already kicking in. Okay, I get that down.
Wow. Okay. I haven't even got to my second one. Oh, fuck. Shit, I should have hit record.
Okay.
I'm kidding.
Son
I'm
of a
kidding.
bitch, I will fucking kill you.
I'm not doing it twice.
Oh.
Oh no.
Okay. Okay, I'm eating it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh god.
I'm
Swallowed
eating
it. You know, I just want to thank my mom just for birthing me.
Yeah.
She didn't know. She didn't know back then.
If I never see you again, I'm sorry.
too. Wow.
Oh, fuck.
My face is on fire. Like, I am hot. I'm sweating.
My lip hurts. My bottom lip, it's transferred to my top lip now.
The entirety of
together.
my mouth. Oh.
My legs bouncing. Nick stomping.
Oh, the Belgian white's not helping. Oh. I think Hunter's in a coma.
He's spicy. Quite robust.
He's in a dab hole.
He's quoting Captain Boy. He's done.
Oh my god.
Oh. I have to
I'm
admit
crying.
the flavor was good until he hit.
I'm officially crying.
Me too.
There it is.
Oh my god.
I irrationally just want to take my headphones off. I just toss them.
I want to tear what a little hair I have out of my head because I feel like the pain would at least subside.
Oh,
But I'm refusing.
fuck, that's hot. Lord, have mercy on our souls. If I believed it. Oh.
It just keeps going. Ow! Ow! Oh, is this what birthing feels like?
How you doing there, Hunter?
You look pretty good. Something that hard for real.
I'm crying and drooling.
I'm gonna need some milk soon. I've resisted, but I have tears rolling down my face.
Oh, me too.
Can't breathe through my nose.
Oh, I think it's starting to tame just a little bit. Oh. In with our brand new co-host, Kate, and thank you again for sitting in with us.
I'm really enjoying this.
I am too. I think this is a lot of fun, and I like talking with you. So this has been a treat for me, and I really appreciate it. So we're going to talk in this last segment about something that is going to be very controversial for some people, and probably not controversial to others in this audience. And so we're going to talk about atheism and what atheism is fundamentally, and what it is not, because there's a huge contention about what atheism is and what it claims or doesn't claim. And I really think that there's some important differences we need to discuss within that realm. And for myself, I have not actually spoken to very many people about this, and I have not spoken to anybody but a couple of my family members and a very select few of my friends and my wife so I have over the last couple of years been kind of dodging back and forth between agnosticism, and I've never been a Christian. I've never been a believer per se. My mom and that side of the family tried to kind of issue me into that life, because that's how they grew up. And so, and that's fine. I get that, but it never sat completely well with me. My father, on the other hand, was more, he claimed himself to be agnostic and spiritual in the big S spiritual sense of the word. So there was never a hard push from him to even garner any religious aspect. He said that he would rather me choose my own path in that regard so that I wasn't constantly trying to fit a round-shaped peg into a God-sized hole.
Right.
And I agree with that. And I really appreciated that from him. It allowed me the flexibility to think on my own. Right. And so for the longest time, I thought about what we are and what life is more as a function of, one, I don't know, but beyond that, we're more of the sum of our parts.
Right.
That's kind of always felt intuitive to me. And so therefore I adopted that spiritual aspect without actually atoning it to or supplying it with a God. That never seemed to be quite the right answer. In the last couple of years, I have definitely wrestled with that. And the more I thought about it and the more I really read and watched and listened to other people talk. And one thing I really enjoyed watching is The Atheist Experience, which I think is a great call-in show, comes from Austin, and listening to debates and kind of wrestling with these concepts. And I realized there's nothing in this life that cannot be explained with skepticism, reason, and scientific foundations.
Right.
And there's just simply no need. There's no need for an overarching father figure.
Right.
There's just the implications of that are so odd when you really think about it that I cannot accept that as a possibility without evidence. And I don't find any evidence to support the God claim. So,
that's the great thing about evidence is that it's the burden of the person saying that it is so to produce the evidence.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is one thing that we're going to talk about a little bit. And I guess so I'm officially coming out, as it were, as an atheist.
Welcome to the club.
Thank you. The weird thing about that is it is unburdening. There's so many things you just don't have to fucking deal with anymore.
Right.
And there's no need to deal with the inconsistencies of scriptures versus beliefs versus actions versus what people say about their actions and belief and their scriptures. None of that matters.
Right.
And it only matters insofar as your relationship to them matters. And I want to make a clear distinction. I don't think I say coming out only because I have not told people. I think that it's fair to say that on the spectrum of people coming out of things, it is way on the low side. I mean, if you're coming out to your family, in the LGBTQ community or as a mental health issue.
Well, I agree and disagree with you. I think that here atheism is just as accepted as
LGBTQ.
Yes, thank you. I
know, I do that
spit the letters out. But yes, I mean, they're almost on a par.
In some ways, I would agree. I think in some ways I feel like my empathy goes to that saying that they are.
Oh, well, it's much harder to be on the spectrum of sexuality. For me, I would think I'm not there, but I actually. Like you, it was very liberating for me when I finally was able to say to myself, you know what? There just isn't a God. I mean, the way it's been presented and what I am supposed to believe that this God is capable of and the actual evidence of living, it just wasn't possible for me. And my religious training was way different than yours. I was raised in the church, and it was a Disciples of Christ church, I was raised in the church, went every Sunday, my mom drug us out of bed and drug us to church and all of that. And about the time that I was 13 or 14 years old, I wanted to be baptized. And the minister.
That's one thing I do appreciate about Disciples. I mean, I'm not going to say a ton of negative things about well, I will say some negative things about religion, but the one thing about disciples that I appreciate and their Protestant side is that they will allow you to sort of choose your baptism as opposed to enforcing that you get baptized
at a certain
as
age,
a child or as a,
right.
Yeah. So I appreciate that.
Right. My issue was that when I approached the minister and said, I'm ready to be baptized. I've been through all your classes. I know what this is about. They refused to baptize me. They told me that I was not ready. And I was so angry. I was 14 years old and I was so angry. And my mom likes to say, well, you just proved their point. No, I didn't, because I didn't stop going to church then. I went to other churches because obviously my church didn't want me.
Wow.
I mean, that was the way that I perceived that message is.
Sure.
I honestly was trying to commit myself to Christ, which is what I had been taught my entire life to do. And you're telling me I can't?
Yeah. Or that you're not worth
or that I'm
doing
not.
it.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
so I did. I went to church with every friend I could possibly go to church with. I explored every religion that I could be exposed to within, reason. And I never found any, I mean, I found a lot of things, bits and pieces that made sense, but nothing that fit. And maybe that's too arrogant of me. Maybe religion's not supposed to fit. You're supposed to fit religion. I don't think that's the way you're supposed to live.
Right. I disagree with that. I think that's,
I mean, some people do actually think that, you conform to your expectations as opposed to changing your expectations, which I think is just really sad. But after I graduated high school and all of that, I did this all through trying to find this place that I felt like it made sense, and nothing, because there was always somebody or some group that wasn't worthy. And I'm like, that's not, and maybe I just completely discarded all of the discriminatory things in the sermons, but I don't ever remember being taught to treat anyone under any circumstances as lesser in any way. And so we love everyone so long as you're not gay. I don't understand that. If we're all made in God's image, you know what I mean? So
absolutely.
There were a lot of those intellectual differences that I just couldn't get past. I struggled with that same idea for a long time, is the idea that if we're all valuable and we're all worthwhile, and there is, it's an older idea now, but it's the whole omnipresent, omniscient God. And that's what I was taught.
Right. And they've transitioned that a little bit in language, but still that's what specifically Christianity
Your
teaches.
name is in a book and it has your life has a certain length. Then,
right. And all of that stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
How does he keep track of everyone?
Well, he's God.
Well, and it's only the Christians.
See, and what's interesting to me as well with that is when you look at all of our history, humanity's history, and let's just take a small little chunk of it when we're talking about, say, the Enlightenment or certain areas where our cultural and intellectual development has jumped forward. All of those things that we attributed to God as being the reason why X happens no longer needed to be. It turned out that, it was because of Y. And we discovered what that is.
Biology or chemistry or geology or
right, exactly.
Whatever.
Any of the natural sciences.
Did this.
Yeah. Any of the natural and theoretical sciences have encroached on that area where the big G God is supposed to exist. Right. And so then you have these diminishing returns of what God is capable of. The God of the gaps fallacy. And to me, that's not possible. If you are God, you cannot fit into that because.
Well, as presented on such platforms, no. I mean, if he's all knowing, all seeing, he determines the beginning, end, and basically the general content of your life. I mean, there's supposedly free will, but apparently free will to not believe in Jesus is not included. But at least that's been my experience.
That's the punishment. Yeah. You will either live by a code, in this case, the Christian or any other religious dogma.
But that's the thing.
Or you have a punishment that is eternal hell and torture and damnation.
Right.
So for one mortal sin, as it were, you literally are now charged with an eternity of pain and torture.
Right.
That doesn't seem like a very just and caring God.
Well, no, it doesn't. I agree with you.
here in the U.S. have about 30% of the vehicles in the world, yet we are responsible for about half of all of the air pollution across the planet. Remember, every time a vehicle burns 1 gallon of fuel, it puts 24 pounds of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the air. I know my personal vehicle has about a 13-gallon tank. That's 325 pounds of air pollution every time I fill up my car. And because I fill up weekly, that's almost 17,000 pounds of pollution annually, just from me. And I have a relatively efficient gasoline vehicle. Now multiply that by 264 million vehicles in the U.S. alone, and many are less efficient than others. Now, that's like a really big number. Okay. Okay, carry the 2. Subtract Matt Damon. Okay. 4.5 trillion pounds of greenhouse gases pumped into our atmosphere every year, just by us. Now, China has surpassed us in pollution numbers, so I guess, yay, we pollute less than China. What sucks about all of this is that it all sucks. There's no realistic way to quickly transition from fossil fuel to renewable energy, especially in transportation. We don't have the infrastructure in place to go, say, all electric, for example. And besides, 63% of our electricity production is dependent on fossil fuels right now. So while going electric would certainly help the problem of air pollution, the electric fuel these vehicles use is essentially still dirty. And I don't want to touch on the problems that extracting rare earth elements to build the batteries cause. That's a whole different topic. But don't get me wrong, this isn't a zero-sum game. Any reduction in air pollution should be hailed as a victory, and this is where the government should be stepping up to the plate. Public-private partnerships have given us revolutionary innovations in science and technology. Solving our pollution problem will take real resolve and real funding from the Fed. So every time you have an opportunity to tell someone in government that we need stronger investment in our environment and pollution controls, tell them.
Carl DeBrody was reported missing on April 17th from an assisted living facility. He had a mental disability and limited communication skills.
This podcast contains adult content.
Second Chance Homes is where Carl was staying at the time of his disappearance last April. He was later found dead inside a storage facility there.
The death of 31-year-old Carl DeBrody remains a mystery. Almost a year later, and no arrests have been made.
Nearly a year later, and still no one is taking responsibility for the death of 31-year-old Carl DeBrody.
Welcome to the James Chambers Show. I'm your host for this podcast, James Chambers. This is a special edition of the James Chambers Show. Up until now, this program has predominantly focused on social issues and politics with silliness kind of sprinkled in for good measure, but today's show is a little different. Today, I'm going to tell you a story. It's a true crime story. Nothing has been fabricated, nothing is embellished, just the facts as they have been reported by law enforcement and the media. It's a story of a broken family, a failed system, corruption, slave labor, and violence. And it begins like this. Over a year ago, a mentally handicapped man was reported missing from an assisted living facility in my community. His body was discovered a week later, but nothing added up. Nothing made sense. But now we know through court filings what really happened to Carl Lee DeBrody. And just a warning, some of the elements of this story are disturbing. Carl Lee DeBrody was reported missing on April 17th, 2017. Someone at Second Chance called the Fulton police at 7:31 a.m. and reported that DeBrody had left the facility on foot and had not returned. Carl's safety was paramount due to his mental disability and his difficulty in communicating. 1 week later, after an extensive search and rescue effort, DeBrody was found. He was found inside a City of Fulton trash can that had been placed in a wooden box, encased in concrete, and left in a locked storage unit at Moore's Easy Storage in Fulton. The investigators quickly determined that DeBrody had been locked in his tomb longer than just 1 week. He had died sometime between the end of October and the end of November of 2016, almost 6 months before he was reported missing by Second Chance Homes. In another odd twist, the day of the missing persons call, that very day, Second Chance Homes was to be acquired by a new company, Fink & Associates. This new company hadn't actually seen any patient files yet. They didn't know that a resident had simply disappeared. So Second Chance fabricated a cover story. Carl was missing, but why and how did all this fit together? As it is with the media, after Carl's body was discovered and no flashy arrests were made, the media attention just slowly faded. The news cycle spun on. We had a new president to worry about. After all, the mob-like hit of a local disabled autistic guy found in a block of cement in a storage unit can only hold the interest of the community for so long, right? Investigations were conducted, the state got involved, and the family of Carl DeBrody filed a lawsuit naming 24 defendants, including state, local, and county administrators and employees of Second Chance Homes. But that is not the end. Not by a long shot. In May of 2018, just a week ago now, and nearly a year after the discovery of Carl's body, we now know what happened to Carl Lee DeBrody. Carl's mental and physical condition began to deteriorate. He had been cut off from his family, his prior guardians, and, as we now know, he was not getting face-to-face time with county guardians charged to ensure his well-being. What happened to this deeply troubled and vulnerable man?
New court documents released this morning reveal the 31-year-old mentally disabled man was forced into fight clubs. The 62 pages of court documents claim that DeBrody's nurses and guardian neglected him, missing all the signs that he was being tortured.
A court document outlines Carl DeBrody's tortured final days, forced into fistfights, sleeping on a basement floor, and his body riddled with bruises and broken bones.
Today we learned a former employee of Second Chance claimed a client confessed to murdering someone there. They say Sherry Paolo, manager of Second Chance's Homes, would take DeBrody to her own home, then force DeBrody to fight other residents for other people to watch. The group home and its owner, Rachel Rowden, had until today to respond to the wrongful death lawsuit filed by DeBrody's biological mother. But in the legal response, they're not taking any of the blame for DeBrody's death, instead putting it on him and his family.
Sherry Paolo, a qualified developmental disabilities professional at Second Chance, and her husband, Anthony Flores, also an employee of Second Chance, began taking Carl and another resident known only as Resident 1 to their personal home in Fulton. There, the men would be forced to do what amounts to be slave labor at Paolo's home. Often they would be kept in their private residence overnight and held in a basement with no mattresses, no blankets, no pillows, nothing at all, only the concrete slab of the floor. Paolo and Flores would often make Carl and Resident 1 bare-knuckle fight for the amusement of their family. And at the time of his death, Carl had serious injuries including at least 6 broken ribs, black eyes, and deep contusions and bruising. Finally, the abuse was too much for his increasingly frail body, and one night between October 25th and November 24th of 2016, Flores was awakened by Carl's screams. Carl was convulsing on the concrete basement floor, bleeding from his nose and his mouth. Instead of calling 911 or initiating life-saving measures, Flores placed DeBrody in the bathtub upstairs, turned on the shower, and left him. Carl died in that tub. His body stayed there for 2 days before being moved. He was then shoved in a City of Fulton garbage can, placed in a wooden box, encased in concrete, and hidden away in that storage unit. Look, yeah, we all agree that there is and should be restrictions on people's ability to own weapons. No, maybe not, I guess. Some people are Second Amendment absolutists that there should be no restrictions on gun ownership at all. Okay, well, what about violent criminals? If you want to argue that everyone should have access to weapons based on a fundamentally wrong reading of the Constitution, you must allow the violent child rapist who lives down the block to own a howitzer. I mean, you can't regulate that, right? Because the Second Amendment. And if you disagree with that scenario, and you should, unless you're a fucking maniac, you are for gun control. And I'm being extreme for a reason here. We have agreed as a society that the public has no need for a machine gun. We all agree we don't need tanks or rocket launchers or grenades or armored personnel carriers. You must understand that all of our constitutional rights have limitations. They all do. That includes your right to own guns, and rightly so. If you want to live in a war zone and shoot machine guns, the Army is always looking for new recruits, unless you have heel spurs, apparently.
Bing, bing, bong, bong.
Now that we all agree that some kind of limits on gun ownership is responsible and reasonable and proper, the question becomes, what is a reasonable and proper set of gun restrictions that allow for gun ownership and for public safety? That question is the real issue, not the bullshit Second Amendment rights distraction that the NRA and the gun lobbyists want you to focus on. Here is some advice for all of you who get rolled or who witness coal rolling. Take your free hand, either one, find your third digit, extend your third digit upward as hard as you can while flexing all of your other digits into a fist. Feel free to use thrusting motions if you are so inclined.
I hope you can see this because I'm doing it as hard as I can.
Now that you have the hand gesture down, let's add a few words to help you express your disappointment and disdain for the coal roller in question. Here's a handy list of terms you may find useful in this situation. Shitbag, fuck trumpet, twat, cocknose, dickweed, dickhead, shitpouch, fuckwit, cockwomble, fuck bucket, fuck face, bumhole, asshole, piss flaps, wank face, knob cheese, jizz breath, piss artist, douche canoe, nutsack, asswipe, chode, fuck stick, peckerhead, butt munch, ass eyes, and the classic motherfucker. So for example, you can say, take your shitbag truck and get to stepping, you cocknosed fuckwit, or I got your license plate, you jizz-breath wank face. I hope this little public service announcement helps you in the future. Remember, knowing is half the battle. We at the James Chambers Show feel strongly that Nazis are bad. We want to make sure that you are safe and secure if ever confronting a Nazi in the wild. Please take a moment and listen to this special announcement. It might save your life.
Remember, Nazis are bad, okay? Like, really bad. Like worse than if you slipped in the shower and landed face down in the toilet bowl. Worse than if your pediatrician was Larry Nassar. If you see a Nazi, don't get close to it. It may be dangerous. Don't ever feed a Nazi. If you feed a Nazi, they might stop being afraid of humans. If a Nazi tries to talk to you, recite this simple phrase. La 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 fuck you. La 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 go away Nazi. This has been a public service announcement from the James Chambers Show reminding you, go away, Nazis. Fuck you.
What this administration has done is nothing less than state-sanctioned child abuse. No more, no less. In our name, this feckless cuss of a man made us the one and only country on the planet that has a de facto policy of tearing children from parents in the name of national security. And that's not just my opinion. The UN Human Rights Council weighed in against us. I mean, my God, that is where we are now. We are now one of the bad guys. We are a rogue nation that terrorizes immigrant children by stealing them from their parents. But that's okay. We just pulled out of the UN's Human Rights Council, so fuck them, right? I'm going to take a wild guess that you have been seeing videos and hearing audio from the border and are seeing talking heads from every media platform imaginable. That is, unless you've been hiding under a rock or in a detention center, I guess. All of that data can be contradictory and sometimes intentionally misleading. I'm looking at you, conservative media, again.
Catch me outside. How about that?
What I want to do today is to make sure that you have the facts to rebut the ridiculous and false claims being made about the Trump policy of stripping immigrant children from their parents at the border. So many lies and half-truths have been thrown around like so much monkey crap at a zoo, it's hard to know, how to make heads or tails of it all. I hope this show will help you understand the basics of what's going on and how to combat the bullshit you hear from Fox News, the Trump administration, and that loudmouth bigot we all have in our Facebook and Twitter feeds. So, let's go. Probably one of the first things you have read or have heard goes something like, well, Clinton did it, or, well, Obama did it, or more obliquely, this is all the Democrats' fault. Look at 1997 and 2008, you see? Wrong. Big fat steaming pile of horseshit. Firstly, there has never been a federal policy up until April of this year with the specific intention to separate children from parents at the border. Never. What happened was that the Trump administration under Attorney General Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III and Homeland Security Secretary Christian Nielsen enacted a zero-tolerance policy of prosecuting all illegal border crossings as criminal, not civil. They go to criminal court, not immigration court under this new policy, and because children can't be prosecuted with their parents at a criminal court, this means that the children are forcibly removed from their family and held in detention centers. A primary difference in the Trump policy is that the children then get classified as unaccompanied minors and transferred to the Office of Refugee Resettlement for further detainment. Let's back up for just a second. When people cite the 1997 law under Bill Clinton, they're actually referring to the Flores Consent Decree. Basically, this settlement mandates that children brought here illegally can't be held in detention for more than 20 days. It makes no claim to the adults crossing the border, but the decree also does not say that families must be separated. Basically, after 20 days maximum, children are to be freed from detention and there is nothing preventing the release of the parents at the same time. So the kids are to be released to a parent, an adult relative, or another caretaker without delay or by the 20 days at maximum. If these options are not exhausted, the government is to find this is a quote, least restrictive setting for the child without unnecessary delay. Under the 2008 under Obama, well, let's just stop right there. It wasn't under Obama. It was a law signed by George W. Bush. That law is called the Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act. This broadly supported bipartisan law simply states that children brought to the U.S. illegally must be released rather than detained, and that they're exempted from the expedited deportation process to go back to their home countries. And there's a little carve out for Canadians and Mexicans in this law because of the contiguous nature of our borders with those countries. But again, no family separation policy is there either. The TVPRA was designed to help rescue children that have been taken by human traffickers. It was not intended to cause psychological damage to the kids. That was Trump, Stephen Miller, and Jeff Sessions' idea. There is a policy debate to be had about immigration. And yes, Democrats and Republicans have failed in their duty to hammer out real immigration reforms in the last decade or two. But this was and still is an abomination, and quite possibly illegal under international law. This shows the deep lack of moral character and fundamental human fucking decency of our leadership in both the White House and the Republicans in Congress. And you'd think at some point we would stop allowing history to repeat itself. We stole African American slave children from their families. We stole Native American children from their families in order to civilize them. We placed innocent Japanese Americans, including children, in internment camps during World War II, and these legacies still haunt us as Americans today. The legacy of this short-lived American experiment in human rights violations will haunt us for decades to come. Our standing in the world has slipped, and once more we have proven that America is at the cusp of total ethical decay. All the proof anyone should need of that decay is in these 4 little words: internment camps for children. think the whole Kavanaugh thing at this point, the only impact is, well, clearly going to be from the jurisprudence standpoint. But the bigger issue is going to be if women, particularly, and the men who support them, actually do go to the polls and who actually do try to demand some sort of recompense for this situation. I don't know if that'll happen. I think people are so just confounded by the news cycle that, I mean, it's gone again. You know, this whole hearing and the impact is gone again for the most part.
I agree with you, and I disagree in a lot of ways. I agree with you that the news cycle is so fast, and it's almost impossible to keep up with what the latest scandal is. Mm-hmm. But I don't think people are forgetting that there is a great deal of them, and the pile of shit is getting high.
Yes.
You need your waiters now, okay? This isn't a step around the piles. This is the shit's getting deep in here, people. And I think there are enough angry people right now because of all of the different things.
Right.
That I think there's a good chance. Now, if that's enough to motivate them to actually make it to the poll or figure out where they're supposed to be, and hopefully their polls aren't closed, you know?
Right, yeah.
But,
or you haven't been taken off the voter rolls.
Right, but different topic. Okay, the only thing that really gives me hope about the whole Kavanaugh thing is, one, Chief Justice Roberts ordered the investigation from the Justice Department into him, like I don't know how extensive, but it's an independent investigation with different directives. And so hopefully more things will be considered, because I don't know how you could possibly say that there is absolutely no credibility to this story when the calendar he wrote himself and for whatever reason preserved for 35 years.
Right. That's a
little weird.
That is really strange.
But, it indicates that it's entirely possible.
Yeah. That one fact alone does indicate that it's possible. I have to
wonder what were the directives in this order for this investigation? What did they consider credible? Because they never once gave her any credibility, no matter what her story was.
Right.
Like, she could have been, it was this exact time at this address and this person drove me, it was this many clicks. You know, I mean, and it wouldn't be good enough. It had to have been someone else.
Well, and also we should remember that this FBI investigation was not even a week. It was 3 days. And they did say that if they had full reign, typically they could wrap up an investigation like this in less than a week. So the time frame, I mean, I think people can kind of quibble about the time, that it was a relatively short investigation. Yeah, it was, but they can actually do this type of investigation quickly if they want to. And again, this is not a criminal investigation, which means that it would be in the hands of the Justice Department specifically.
Well, and they actually get to choose what part of it is released, which is another major concern to me.
Right. But that's what the FBI specifically, in this case, with the FBI, what it's doing is a background investigation, which falls under the purview of the executive office, which means that the Trump administration very specifically gets to set the parameters of the investigation. And they gave them a list originally of 11 people I think it was 11 people that they could potentially review. And then they said, well, no, you can do whatever you want. It's okay. But I'm not convinced that was ever actually codified. I mean, the Trump investigation,
especially with the time frame upon it. I mean, yes, you have however many agents that you can devote to this but
sure.
Still.
But for God's sake, they didn't
interview 40 people
who wanted to,
and said, hey, I have relevant information one way or the other.
If even 10% of those people had relevant information, we should know about it.
Yeah.
And they should have investigated, or I should say interviewed, Dr. Ford and Mr. Kavanaugh. And they didn't. Though
but the testimony in front of the Senate was enough, where,
it's fucking ridiculous that's enough. You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying, because to me, the fact that man got up there and had a freaking temper tantrum because he's been wrongly accused. No, you know what? You haven't credibly proved to me that she is absolutely full of shit.
Yes. And she was eminently credible. And the fact that she was credible and he lacked even, And I can understand. You can be upset. You can be a little angry. You can get a little weepy. I totally get you are
Showing
in a very
emotion
hard
isn't
spot.
wrong.
It's not wrong at all.
It's the word you choose and the way in which you deliver them.
It was the partisan hackery that just flowed out of his mouth that immediately disqualified him from the seat. As far as I'm concerned, as a job interview, that was it. You're done. Despite everything else, whatever anybody thinks, that should have been it. What they have been saying about us now is that we are violent and angry and pitchforks are coming and Antifa will kill everybody. Even though the progressives don't really claim Antifa. Antifa doesn't really claim progressives. We just happen to be on the side both of being anti-fascist.
Right.
So they're not a progressive movement.
Yeah, no, most of them consider themselves, as far as I know, consider themselves like Green Partiers and libertarians and
libertarians for sure.
And anarchists, yeah.
Yeah.
Although anarchy just scares me, man.
Oh no, it's not. Anarchy is a political, social ideology that really does not have any merit. I mean, when you really start to dig down into it. So this false equivalence between violence on the left and violence on the right is so clearly outrageous. Once you actually look at the real world scenarios, almost every major event has been spawned by a white, usually conservative crackpot.
But what about the Senate shooter guy
the Bernie bro?
That's who I guess maybe that shot Scalise.
Yeah, he was.
But I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Yes, it was bad and not good for the cause. I mean,
right.
Let's take a pause for the cause and not shoot people.
Yeah, and that goes for anybody.
Right, but
this is not a left-wing problem, is the point, is that
right,
this is not a left-wing problem.
Yes, that's actually like the exception to the rule. Like generally when you hear this shit, it is somebody, white nationalist, white supremacist, anti-Semite, which...
the point is accurate. The idea that somehow...
Or a racist, the Charleston shooter, like you had mentioned earlier.
Right. The thing is that the actual anger and the hatred and the vitriol comes from the far right. It doesn't come from the far left. Let's dig into the meat of this just a little. You have probably heard the argument that DACA is just amnesty for illegals, and we shouldn't allow illegals to benefit from our hardworking American tax dollars. They're criminals and rapists and murderers, and what about MS-13? And if you support amnesty, then you're against real Americans and the rule of law. First, DACA is not amnesty. Amnesty means a full pardon for criminal action. Fun fact, illegal immigration is not a criminal violation. It's civil. There is a big difference. Well, in any way, okay, let's just say that DACA, let's air quotes this, is amnesty. So what? Is that such a bad thing? These people were kids under 16 when they were brought to this country through no fault of their own. They have been participating in our schools, in our jobs, our homes, our friendships and families for a decade now. They're laborers and educators and firemen and women and police officers, and they serve in the military. They're probably better Americans than most Americans you know. Second, they benefit our country in a myriad of ways. To pull the carpet out from under them with a simple swipe of a pen just to score a political point, it's just disgusting. More than that, it's a gross violation of our own supposed cultural ethic. Trump violated a promise we made to nearly 1 million people in this country. We made a promise to these children that you will be safe here. We will not deport you, and we will help you acclimate to American life. In turn, they have worked, they have learned, they have committed, and they have, most importantly, stayed here in the U.S., providing us with a new pool of talent and labor and intellect and culture. Again, DACA doesn't have a downside when you look at the facts, not the hyper-partisan spin machine. If you hear politicians or pundits or your Fox News watching uncle conflating DACA with immigration, stop. Just stop, listen, and understand. They have a clear ulterior motive. DACA is a specific program that protects around 800,000 people living in the U.S. right now. Immigration overall is not the same thing. There is a debate that can and probably should happen about our legal immigration system, but that will take time, and it should take time. It should also be deeply bipartisan. And if anything has proven the first year of the Trump presidency, the Republicans are not interested in anything bipartisan. They own the House, they have a majority in the Senate, and they have an ideologically malleable, narcissistic sponge living in the White House. I mean, why compromise? The numbers on that is it's going to cost $32 billion over 10 years if we implemented Medicare for all for everybody. And yes, you're exactly right, because how do you pay for it? $32 billion? How do you pay for it? And I've seen this on CNN. I've seen this of course, on Fox. I've seen this on all kinds of news and things that claim they are news. But they never include the point that, yes, it would cost us $40 billion in that same time frame if we did not apply Medicare for all. And everybody would be covered.
Right.
Whereas they are not now.
Right.
So it's going to cost us less money to cover more people. And that convenient little fact is just, or inconvenient fact, depending on your perspective, is just kind of pushed off to the side. And like I said, I've seen this on CNN. I've seen this on, not MSNBC so much, but, Fox for sure. And it's silly. It's silliness. And if you are fiscally conservative, then this is a no-brainer. Be
intellectually honest as well.
Yes, you can be fiscally conservative and intellectually honest and look at a system like that and go, oh, wow. So you're going to save $8 billion? Sign me up.
Right.
I mean, the waste, fraud, and abuse that we have now doesn't even cover everybody. So if everybody's going to get covered and we save $8 billion, fucking hey, great. That's fiscally conservative. Welcome to the club. It's like at that point, just welcome to the progressive, logical club. At this point, I want to
make me a regular guest.
Well, I think that needs to happen.
I'm so down with that.
I think we definitely need to do this more often. But I'd like to say two things. One, if anybody is listening to this is feeling triggered or defensive about their religious convictions or even their stance on religion in general, then I encourage you to just think about that for a little while, because what we have been saying is not directed at any one person. And so if you take that personally, I think it's important for you to look at your belief system and either identify with it and start working towards solidifying it, or start questioning it. I would say both. You should start questioning it no matter what, but you should definitely question it and determine whether or not that belief system is actually true for you. And
there's nothing wrong with it not, if that's what you find.
Absolutely. There is exactly right. There is nothing wrong with discovering that you don't really believe the things you think you believe, or the things that you thought you believed, or the things you were told to believe as a kid growing up. It's okay to question those beliefs, and especially to those people who are already atheist or already kind of heading down that path. The last thing you should do is berate or attack people who are on the religious side, who are just attempting to make their life better. There's nothing wrong with believing. It's the actions that you take with that belief that's the problem. And if people want to believe in a god or, an animist thing or a spiritual thing, or if they want to be Shinto and believe in the kami or whatever it is, they're trying to better their lives. It's where they take that belief into the public square that becomes an issue. And that's where we can push back and cause some boundaries to be put between our secular society and religious dogma. But until they hit that point, Be kind, be courteous, have conversations, debate if you want to, if these people are willing, but do not make fun of them to the best of your ability. And sometimes that's difficult, especially when you're talking about things that are fundamentally ridiculous, like we've discussed with prosperity gospel and mega churches and things like that, where even a lot of religious folks look at that and think it's ridiculous. That's probably fair game. We helped establish these authoritarian dictatorships in several Latin countries, and then we act bewildered that the people are suffering and dying. Well, it's not our problem. Why should America have to solve all the world's problems? Well, we helped create the atrocities. And then to top it all off, when people from Mexico or Central America or South America, when they come here to get asylum, their families are separated, and they're locked into a legal battle that can literally take years to process. And there's no guarantee that they're going to be allowed to stay at the end of all that. And Jesus, I didn't even touch on some of the horrible things that NAFTA and the war on drugs has done in these countries too. You know, look, can we take every refugee? You know, probably not. Can we take every asylum seeker? Well, again, probably not. It's entirely possible that there are people in this caravan that are really only coming to hitch a ride so that they can get through the system a little more quickly and gain entry into the U.S. with some kind of legal status. But guess what? There's no evidence, none, that any of these people are terrorists or they're Middle Easterners or bad hombres, as the president is claiming in his campaign rallies. He even admitted that he had no actual evidence to support those claims. In other words, he is lying. So let's get real. No one is asking the U.S. to take in all of the world's refugees. No one is demanding that we take all of the world's poor. Those are straw man arguments, and just call them out for what they are. Countries that border other less wealthy or less stable countries have a responsibility to render aid and comfort to their neighbors when possible. That strengthens your relationships and it creates stability in that area of the world. So what does that look like? Well, Canada and Mexico are our direct neighbors. I mean, they literally live in the house next door to us on either side. If you want to live a happy life, you have to have, at the very least, a basic level of civility with your neighbors. Central and South America are just 2 doors down on the planetary block. We claimed them as semi-protectorates, remember? Since 1823, we have been exerting our influence and wants onto Latin America. We covered those nations in a blanket of big stick nationalism, and we did some pretty bad things in the process. America has an ethical obligation to render aid to our friends in the South. Why? Because while we have at times been helpful to those nations, America has abdicated its responsibility to protect those people in our sphere of influence. We can't solve the world's problems, and we're not responsible to do that. But we have an obligation to help our neighbors that we have abused in the past. And that's my thought for today. The problem is we can't fucking get away from our hacky sack game to be able to actually do that. So
oh no, you just so dated yourself. People don't do hacky sack anymore.
I know, but
I love you, Marshall. Oh, we're
just
90s
saying.
babies.
We're 90s
no
babies.
hacky sacks anymore. They're like, what the fuck is a hacky sack? If anyone under the age of like 28 is listening, they're
right.
like, what did he just say? What the fuck?
It's entirely true. I did. But come on, man. Hacky sack. People used to play that when they were hippies and a teenager.
That was our own okay stop with your crazy wording.
It is. Aww. So welcome back to the third half of the James Chambers Show. We tried to do a little video. It didn't really work. I couldn't find anything fun. Laura Ingraham was boring. So what are you going to do? But we thought we'd come back and just sort of wrap up our thoughts and kind of just be here with you guys for a few minutes before we go, because this is, in fact, the last time that this show, at least for the foreseeable future, will be here on this channel in this form. So we want to just sort of take a minute and talk about that, and then we're going to close out. So, and honestly, I have to admit, I am a little perturbed at all this. This is it's a little intimidating for me, because it's, as I said before, it's putting this into the real world and taking it out of this little tiny corner that
it's not as safe.
It's not as safe. That's very true. And so I'm excited and curious and a little bit afraid of it.
I'm stoked.
But I'm excited too.
I mean,
yeah.
I don't have any, like, other than I don't care if I look like an idiot. I figure that'll just add some value to the whole thing. I don't care, honestly. I love being here and having this conversation and the patois that we've got. You know, I really enjoy this, and just to be able to take and go with you on this, I'm stoked. I'm really excited, because this is never anything I ever thought I would do, like, for real. Maybe to play and every once in a while, but no, sure.
Well, I'm excited to have you with me and along the whatever ride it's going to be. I mean, we may devolve
to fart jokes before it's all over. We just don't know.
Oh, well. But let's not kid ourselves. It's entirely possible that will happen.
Well, probably on the regular. But it's hard to tell. We can't foresee these things.
Yeah, but I think that the future. I know that for all of you who are listening to this particular channel, I know that most of you got in early on, so you've heard the change. You've heard how things have migrated, and we've been getting a lot of positive feedback from what we're doing now. And there was a lot of good feedback from before too. And I appreciate all of that. But I think that taking this and moving it forward into a whole new venue is going to open up possibilities. And, who knows? I mean, who knows what this could create? With the new company, this could be just the first show, and it could evolve into several other shows. It could evolve into other types of media for all we know. There's an evolutionary process that's in front of us, and it's freaky, man. It's freaking me out, man. Freaking me out. But it's super cool. I'm super excited, but yeah. So I'm glad you're even interested in doing this, let alone
Are you kidding?
Stepping into like a full on.
I'm really excited that I get to regularly talk to somebody that's just as nerdy and knowledgeable about, like, it's just nice to have a smart conversation and without wanting to kill yourself or the person you're talking to.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah,
and I agree. There's a catharsis, and that's part of the reason I even did all of this, over a year ago to begin with, was just that catharsis of venting the things that I've been thinking into the world, and whether or not anybody gives a shit, it was there. Mm-hmm. And it was just something, it was a new project. It was something I've never done before. And, it was exposing myself a little bit in a completely legal way, which I have learned.
Which are not the fun ways.
Yeah, I've learned that, those apparently are inappropriate.
Frowned on.
Stupid fucking people. So,
Were you urinating in public? Uh-huh.
So, no. I mean, well, if that was all it was.
I mean, right, but they call that indecent exposure anyway.
Well, I mean, I guess if you're waving it around, but no, whatever. Whatever. I don't care. If you want to pee on a wall, pee on a wall. Who gives a shit? I mean, that's probably wrong, but pee in a gutter, in a drain. Find a drain in the parking lot and pee in that. That would be the most socially acceptable and
Well,
not wave
actually-
your dick around.
Actually, what I think
We have already
personally-
devolved into dick jokes.
What I think is personally the most acceptable is to go to your car, open the door, turn off the interior light, and pee between your door and the car.
I mean, yeah, I guess if you're going to be all highfalutin about it.
Well,
I mean-
either that or pee on the corner or whatever. I mean, but
I'm Katie Von Monocle. She's
yeah, no, I just it'll be fun. We'll figure it out. And not too much of the fun exposure.
Yeah,
probably none if there are going to be cameras.
At least for some of them. So there you go. We're going to stop now. And this has been one hell of a fun time. It's been a fun ride for us, for me, for the people who've been in here before. It's been a really good opportunity to just have some company and some enjoyment and hopefully get better at doing this. And
what do you mean we're brilliant?
And we've only gotten more brilliant.
Well,
but Kate and I we're going to evolve. This show is evolving. And so with that being said, thank you, everybody who listens, and thank you who have supported us. There are people who have donated equipment and donated time and donated their taste buds and donated all kinds of shit to make this show happen.
And it will all be required again.
And
just wait.
It will be. There is going to be a whole new slew of things coming down the pike. But keep an eye on this channel. I will be posting a video actually on this channel sometime soon, and I'll put that out on Facebook and Twitter and everything else. But there will be a video explaining where we are and how to get to us next, and also what we'll be doing with the channel in the future. So be watching. Keep an eye on this channel. It's not going away, but I will tell you where to find the new content with the new show. Possibly renamed, we don't know, but it will have a new theme. It's going to have a more tight focus, and we will be out in the world. That being said, any last?
Watch out, world.
Yeah. Watch out, world. The progressives are coming for you.
The progressives.
So with that, if you want to contact the show, then the actual email address is still the same. All right. realjcshow2017@gmail.com. That's there. It's always going to stay there. The Twitter handle is @realjcshow. That will stay there. If we need to adjust those things, we will. But for the time being, you can always reach us there. And that does it for the YouTube version of the audio podcast version of the James Chambers Show.
Cue boys to men. It's so hard. It's so hard to say goodbye to yesterday. Look at that. We managed to do that together without sounding like shit.
I haven't heard it in post yet. Bye.
Bye.
Is going to leave. All I know.
Oh.
Okay, I feel like I feel like I'm cresting. I feel like he's cresting.
The James Chambers Show is a production of Chamber Pot Media, LLC.